This is the Non-Obvious Insights Show. Hashtag non-obvious. I'm Rohit Bhargava. You can tag your friends, share this right now, and this is a part of a weekly series where I talk about the most interesting and, yes, non-obvious stories of the week. Happy Thursday, Non-Obvious Nation. I am so excited to be talking with you about stories. And if you just came from my South by Southwest broadcast, thank you for joining the double header today. This is very exciting. This is a show all about the most interesting, fascinating, and non-obvious stories of the week. And last week, in the episode number 217, we talked about a robot dog from Singapore. We talked about the future of learning, and I did a whole summit with my friend Mike Palmer, which is also available on the YouTube channel for you to watch on a replay later on. We talked about the misery of flying right now and what it means to actually get on a plane, and there were some great articles about that. And just lots and lots of interesting stories. So it was an amazing, amazing time last week, just sharing new, interesting stories. And you may be watching this right now, either on YouTube, live stream, or you may be watching it in our Facebook group, the Non-Obvious Nation private group. So if you want to join that team over there, you can join that. Or you might be watching on my page on Facebook. So we're live streaming to lots of different places. And you can watch and comment, and I hope you do, on any of those. Definitely tag hashtag non-obvious and tag your friends. I mean, this is going to be a really, really fun show today as well. I've got some pretty interesting stories to share with you. And once again, many of you know who, if you get my weekly email, you get 6 stories in that email, but there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make it into the email. And in this video show, I share not only the insights behind the stories that I did put in the email, but also the ones that didn't make it. So you get a little bit of behind the scenes. You'll get to see some of the more interesting stories that maybe you didn't see, and you definitely didn't get in the email. So all of that is going to come. And today we're going to talk about how NASA issued new guidelines for how humans should behave in space. We're going to talk about the truth about air pollution, which I was pretty excited to read, and then I realized what the truth was, and it's not so good. So we're going to talk about that. Not always positive stories, but hey, they're interesting and fascinating. That's the point. And I'm going to show you probably my new favorite site on the entire internet right now. So addictive. I wasted so much time last night on it, and I think you might end up doing the same once I share it with you. So we are going to not only share the stories now, but I'm also going to share all of the links to every story that I talk about in the notes on YouTube and also as a comment on Facebook. So you'll be able to get all the links. You can click on the stories to read more about any one of them if you want. So it'll be super easy to do that. And you'll just be able to get access to everything. So whether you're watching live or if you're watching this on a replay, thank you. Unfortunately, you won't be able to comment live stream, but I really appreciate you watching on the replay. And if you are watching because you came from my South by Southwest talk, thank you for joining me for a doubleheader. I hope that this is going to be worth the double time that we're spending together with the two of us. So I'm very excited about that. Please, during the show, tell me where you are, share in your comments, anything that kind of hits your mind as we're talking about these questions you have, anything like that. I'll continually be sort of talking about those and sharing them throughout. So let's get started with the stories. And the first story that I want to talk about is really an interesting one. It's all about the Museum of Youth Culture, and the Museum of Youth Culture is one that's really here. Let me quickly share my screen here. Okay. There we go. So the Museum of Youth Culture is a group in the UK that has issued a call for people to share their teenage memories. So yeah, those embarrassing photos of you, someone actually wants them. And what's funny, when I was thinking about with this, I don't know about you, but one of my great ambitions right when this whole lockdown thing started was to take all of these videos and images that I had in the digital sphere from these great trips that we'd taken, and I was going to organize all of them and turn them into photo books. Did you guys do this? Like, did you say, oh, I'm going to organize all my stuff? Like, for me, it remains an ambition. I haven't quite made it to doing it yet. But if you find some of these older photos, depending on your age, the photos of you as a teenager might not really be digital. They're not for me. but they may be interesting. And I just thought this was like a funny, just a funny story because, one of the things they talked about is people are stuck at home and they might be finding all of these like adorable, rebellious, or just plain awkward glory photos. And really what the museum's trying to do is archive this look at what people used to wear, what they used to think or look like just from the images. And I thought it was like this interesting idea to gather what a lot of these stories could be. And I think that's just it's a pretty cool project. So if you do have some old photos, you may want to share those. So so that was one of the stories. The next one over here is a story from a professor at in the New York, I think it was like the Stern School, who wrote about just the disruption in higher education and how the world is changing for anyone in higher ed or any students who are thinking about going to college or maybe in college right now. And there was a lot of really interesting insights that I took away from this one. This point here, the coronavirus is forcing people to take a hard look at the $51,000 tuition they're spending. Even wealthy people can't swallow the jagged pill of tuition if it doesn't involve getting to send their kids away. Like, would you pay that type of money? I mean, first of all, would you pay that money at all? But would you pay that money if you couldn't go physically to school? It's a big question and a big challenge right now. And he's really imagining a future where maybe we have what the article calls cyborg universities. So like universities where there's some piece of it in person and then more of it virtual. And how does the relationship between those two things go? And it's just, it's going to be a really interesting progression to see what happens there. And so I wrote about that, and I thought that was a good one because it affects a lot of us. The next story that really captured my attention was all about air pollution, because I don't know about you, but I assumed so far. Oh, sorry, we got a question here. So yes, Dr. Benjamin, thank you for coming in from the South by presentation. I really appreciate you. I'm getting used to going back and forth. See one from Illy here. Do I speak Spanish? Un poquito. And thanks to my friend, Alan, who taught me on the soccer field. So my Spanish comes from playing soccer. So I have soccer Spanish. I don't know if that's a thing, but that's what I got. And Asokan, good to see you. Thank you for joining from India, and good to see you here again. Thank you. So great comments, questions. I'm going to continue to kind of go back and forth. This is episode 218, but we did a little bit of a Star Wars trick, if you remember from the first episode, which is we started with episode 216 with the video show. So we're actually 3 episodes into the video show, and I'm getting used to where things are coming up. I'm being produced and directed by my amazing wife, and so she's helping on the back end, and we're just we're getting the flow of this and testing it out. So let me know what you think. Hopefully it's useful, and let's jump to this story here, which is from the NPR, and it's all about something that I didn't expect with air pollution. I mean, I just assume, because I'm not driving, lots of people aren't driving, that air pollution must be getting better right now. But in fact, it's not really the case. And the reason why is because in lots and lots of cities like Los Angeles, a lot of the air pollution doesn't really come from traffic. It comes from trucks, it comes from factories, it comes from lots of different places. And so the downside of this is that air pollution isn't making this magical recovery that at least I thought that it was. And so this was a little bit eye-opening for me, and it was kind of useful to know and see that. So so that was one. The next story that I love, and this is, by the way, my new favorite site on the internet. It's called thisworddoesnotexist.com. And thisworddoesnotexist.com was this really, really fun site where you just press a button and it continually changes the invented word. And so the 2 invented words that I created when I went through this was lunty, which is relating to a great time, exciting, or exciting, funny, or unplumspect. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. unplumspect, which means lacking or having no apparent significance. And it was funny because both of these really apply to this website. I mean, it has no significance, but it is still a great time. And I loved it probably more than I can really describe or that I should describe. And so if you're a word geek like me, I cannot recommend this site enough. It will probably keep you from doing the real work that you need to be doing. But you know what? It's okay. It's worth the time. It really is. I think you should spend some time with it. So I wrote about that one as well. There was another story sorry, let me jump in here. So it's a question here. In terms of education, I wonder if schools move toward one-off virtual resources instead of faculty consistently and having topics and assignments. You know, I hope so in some sense. I mean, I really do think that there's a big learning opportunity for experiential here. And people have been asking me, like, look, in a virtual sense, like, can we create experiences? And I just think it's a great, great opportunity to reimagine that, especially for people who've been maybe teaching the same thing the same way for a long time. And so we're forced to do it differently. And sometimes we need to be forced to do it differently in order to really engage. So yeah, that was a good one. Martin, you're doing an amazing job. Thank you. I'm glad you found me via South by Southwest too. And I'm glad that my wife is pumping me up with some positive comments here and not putting up the ones that tell me that I'm looking dumb and sounding dumb, which I'm sure they're out there too. So thank you for that, hun. Keeping it positive. I like that. Okay, let's jump to the next story. So this one is, and keep the comments coming, by the way. I'm going to start pausing more. I'm figuring out my flow. This story was just interesting. It was all about a pizza shop owner and his friend who realized that DoorDash was selling pizzas from their shop for $16 and then paying them $24 for the same pizza. And so they kind of started thinking, well, could I just order my own pizza because I'm getting paid more than what they're charging and make the difference? And in fact, they could. Now, at the end of the story, it says that DoorDash was doing some sort of like a load testing or something like that, and that's why this happened. Who knows? But one of the interesting kind of quotes from here was, you could just order pizzas yourself and continually kind of get more revenue for yourself. I'm not sure if this would work for most people, but the bigger point here and what really kind of captured my attention was the figure in the article, and it's linked to another report that said that on $900 million of revenue, DoorDash actually lost $450 million. And I think for anybody who's not in Silicon Valley, it was just like yet another example of these hugely inflated companies that are valued at multi-X times what they should be and generate just losing money year after year after year until they get acquired for tons of money by someone else. And it's this really frustrating model that says, look, you don't need to be successful. All you need to do is have the perception of success and build enough audience, even though that audience isn't really making you money, because then somebody will acquire you for the audience. And it's a flawed model on so many levels. And it's frustrating for people who aren't making a lot of money that way. I'm sure it's great for people who are making money that way because they just flip it and take the money. But it's a tough one to get your head around when you're not in that world. And so this article really brought that to life, I thought. So, that was an interesting one. Let's keep rolling here. So the next story was all about categories of companies and products that were making a comeback in sometimes surprising ways. So processed food, for example, American cheese, sales were going down and down because it's not the healthiest type of food. But now when we want to go to the grocery store less and less, maybe we're actually buying that. And in fact, that's what the numbers are starting to show. So like processed foods, people going back to playing golf, people using napkins versus paper towels, like all of these were examples of categories that this Ad Age article talked about and just said there that the pandemic may have offered a lifeline to some of these things that were kind of on their way out. Because nobody was really adopting them and nobody was really doing them. And golf had been in a long decline, but now, I mean, think about the sports that you can play with social distancing, I mean, golf is up there, right? Because you can actually do that and social distance at the same time. And so more younger people are coming and saying, okay, maybe I'll try golf because at least I can do that. And that's kind of what, the simplification of the consumer perspective is what this article kind of talked about. So next big story was I just love the branding of this, the Artemis Accords. It just sounds like a science fiction-y thing, but in fact it's real. It's NASA going and saying that we are issuing guidances for humans in outer space because as more private companies go into outer space, we need a shared principle of how we're going to behave and how we're going to act. So not exactly the prime directive, right? But like just a philosophy. So we have peaceful purposes. We have transparency. We're going to register space objects. I mean, these are all of the different guidelines on this slide here. Protect our heritage, share data, have interoperability, promise that we're going to come to each other's aid. I mean, some of these things just seem super basic, but it's a hopeful thing, I think, that someone has come out and actually published those and said these are the things that we believe in, and these are the things that we want. So those are the stories that I shared in my email, and as promised, I am going to also now give you some insight into the stories that I did not share in the email. But before I do that, I want to just give you a way to subscribe to the email. So if you're not already on the list to get the newsletter every Thursday morning, this is how to get there. That blue text down at the bottom is my Twitter handle, so you can tweet at me. And if you're just joining us, this is the Non-Obvious Insights show, where my name is Rohit Bhargava, and I am the author of a book called Non-Obvious and multiple books in that series. And every week I talk about the most interesting stories of the week, and I share them in email, and then I give you a behind the scenes look at them in this video show. And that's what you're watching right now. So if you'd like to tweet at me, you can go to @RohitBhargava. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can get into our Non-Obvious Nation Facebook group, which is a private group, or you can email me directly. So lots of ways to reach me, lots of ways to get in touch. I hope you do, and I hope you comment as we're doing the show and as we're going through the stories now. And we are about to move to phase 2 of the show, which is all of the new stories that did not make it into the email. So here we're going off script, behind the scenes, share some of those stories. And let's go with the first one. The first one is about restaurants and how restaurants are reacting. And I found a bunch of these stories with interesting visuals that spotlight how restaurants are reopening with social distancing. One restaurant near me in Northern Virginia is serving meals in the parking lot. Another one in Germany has people wearing those like swimming noodles on their head to encourage social distancing with the swimming noodles. There was another story, I don't have a visual of it, but there's another story where people are wearing like these big tires around them and walking around almost like one of those jumpy things that babies walk in. They have kind of that in bars. There's another restaurant that has these little cocoons, plastic cocoons by the water. All of these were kind of interesting examples of this story of just gaming the system, right? Of trying to figure out a way to reopen in a safe way that allows people to still have that dining experience and to reimagine what the dining experience looks like. And I love stories of resilience like this. I love stories where people are saying, I'm going to get super creative. I'm going to try to do something that nobody else is doing. I'm going to try and do it in a different way. And maybe you're seeing creative stories like that too. I mean, if you are, let me know, send them to me. Many of you know, I'm a story collector. I mean, I love these things. And so if you find anything like that, any stories like that, I mean, who knows, maybe it'll make it into next week's newsletter. Maybe it'll make it into next week's Non-Obvious Insights show. So all of those are opportunities, I think. Let's keep rolling to the next story. So this one was just about the resurgence of bikes. And what I thought was interesting about this wasn't so much, I mean, I'm always looking for an angle beyond the obvious. So the obvious here is, okay, bike sales went up because people are driving less, and so maybe they have more time to bike. What I thought was interesting about this, though, was because of that, number one, people are feeling safer going on roads that they would not have ordinarily gone on because there's less cars. maybe they get used to that. Maybe that behavior continues. But more than that, urban planners are looking at this behavior and saying, okay, well, maybe this is our opportunity to create those bike lanes that we've been meaning to create. And I've thought for some time that a world where people are driving less and using roads less seems to me to be the perfect opportunity to fix infrastructure that has long been neglected. And we have that, at least here in the US, we have a lot of infrastructure that hasn't been repaired or renovated for decades, and it badly needs it. And maybe this is the opportunity to do that. And I kind of saw these articles as opening that window and saying, well, maybe there's a chance to do this. Like an influx of bicycles means we need the infrastructure to keep those riders safe. Like that's what this story is partially about. And the other is just everybody's getting bikes. Got one comment here. Love the one where a restaurant owner used a shower curtains to separate tables. Yeah, that's good. Shower curtains. It's I think there could be a theme there as well. It's kind of fun. That's a good one. All right. The next story that I thought was interesting was why is Facebook so afraid of checking facts? So you may have seen stories about this. Facebook says, look, we're going to put this stuff out there. Some stuff we fact check, but they don't seem to fact check all that much. And maybe it's frustrating. Like I know I've been frustrated by that. And I didn't realize that part of what has swayed them, and in particular what has swayed Mark Zuckerberg apparently, is all of this research that has shown in the past that when you present people with facts that don't fit their worldview, they actually double down and believe their worldview even more. So the facts push them further towards their inaccurate beliefs. That was the research that had been published some time ago. And so what this article does is it really takes a deep dive look at that and says, is that actually true? Is it really true that if people see facts that are presented as facts that don't agree with their beliefs, that they say, screw the facts, I'm just going to believe what I believe? Or do they actually change their beliefs and get smarter as a result of seeing facts? And what they found was there are many studies that show the exact opposite. They show that, in fact, yeah, when people do get presented with facts, they do start to have more accurate beliefs. And it's important to give people facts. And I think this whole idea that we need to censor the facts because we're afraid that people will ignore them even more seems to be pretty stupid, if you ask me. I mean, it seems like it's based on this flawed idea that we can't trust people to see facts because they might dismiss them. Well, I mean, that doesn't seem logical. And I just thought this article was really well written in a way that I hope someone who has some sort of influence at Facebook reads and questions whether that research that they're looking at that seems to dictate their policy towards saying whether something's fact or not may be, in fact, totally flawed. Next story that I captured here was all about an app that uses something that maybe some of us have used in languages in the past to learn them. So I had a question before about Spanish. Like part of the way I learned Spanish is I would listen to Maná, which is a great Mexican band, and their lyrics. And when I listened to their lyrics, all of a sudden, like I know what a mariposa is now, right? Because of I listened to their music. And what this story was all about was just like how sometimes learning the rhythm of dialogue between your language and the language that you're trying to learn may be the optimal way to try and learn how to speak a different language. And I just thought that was a really smart way to try and help people learn a new language. And this one, fair warning, and this is one of the things I always look for in the story, this one was a sponsored post. So it's not like a journalist just found this and started writing about it. It was a sponsored post, but it was still an interesting app and interesting enough for me to spotlight and want to share, despite the fact that it was a paid article that was placed. So anybody who is doing that type of marketing, sometimes it does work if it's great content and if it really is authentically being written about. Sometimes that sponsored piece does capture people's attention. In this case, it worked for me. Next big story that really got me thinking was this one from Time magazine, where they talked to a guy whose wife died, and he had all of this paperwork that he had to do. And in fact, this is not a COVID. I mean, they smartly repackaged this as a COVID story, but it happened, I think, 2 years ago. So it wasn't really related to the pandemic. It was instead related to just the bureaucracy that comes with medicine and people dying sometimes. And one of the things he wrote about that I thought was really powerful was just the sense that he got these huge bills for various things. And as soon as whoever was sending the bill found out he had insurance, the cost of that went immediately down 90%. Not that somebody paid 90% of it, but that the actual cost of it went down 90%. And if you think about it, I mean, where else in life or in the world does that happen? It's almost like a magic word, right? That unlocks everything and says, okay, now your new price is not this, it's this, because you just literally won the lottery or something like that because you had the right type of insurance. And it shouldn't be like that. And that was one of the things he wrote about. And another piece that he wrote about was just the inhumanness of the forms compared to the humanness of the people. So he would interact with people in the hospitals or who were doing the billing or even like the accounting people. And they knew that he had lost someone and they dealt with him in a very empathetic way. So as soon as he got in touch with people, there was lots and lots of empathy. But when he was dealing with the forms, it was just fill out this form, fill out that form, and here's the bill. And there was a big, big disconnect. And it's just a good reminder, I think, for all of us that when we're trying to create a human experience, like, we can't just do that when people deal with humans. Like, we need to create a human experience in the forms and the stuff that people fill out along with the human experience with humans. Next big story that I wrote about, and this kind of awakened something personal for me because I used to work with Kellogg's and on Fruit Loops back when I was with an agency in Australia. And I remember our job at that point was to take the boxes that the US team created for Fruit Loops and airbrush out all the fruit because the Australian government regulation said you can't show fruit on the box if there's no fruit in the product. And some of you may not realize this, but there's not actual fruit in Fruit Loops. And so anyway, this story brought that back up for me. And it used probably one of the older tricks in the marketing playbook, which is change something that people don't realize they care about so that they get angry and care about it again. And that's kind of what this story does, right? It takes the Toucan Sam and it redraws him, and this funny comment sort of points out how bad that redrawing is. And I guarantee you that if they haven't already, they're going to say, oh, we're sorry, we didn't realize how much you love Toucan Sam the way he was, and change him back magically, right? And when they change him back, then it's going to be back to what it used to be in the past. So, that's just like I just thought it was interesting from a marketing perspective because that type of story often comes out. And the last one, this is also a marketing story, but this one I thought was just really powerful for what it was. It was a pro bono campaign for an orchestra that brought a group of Afghan women performers to I think it was to the UK. I don't remember exactly where they went, but I think it was to the UK. And to commemorate their appearance, they commissioned a rug, to be woven in the traditional style, and they found a third party that could do it in the traditional style and to tell the story of these women. And it was so powerful that it actually won the Grand Prix in the Drum Creative Awards, which is a magazine that does creative awards for advertising and marketing. But I loved the story of it because what it illustrated is that sometimes the things that we hold can tell the story of something over a longer period of time and give us a powerful reminder for that too. So that was just that story I just thought was really, really fascinating. So those were our non-obvious stories of the week. I appreciate you taking the time to join me for these. And, I do this, the reason I do this whole thing in the first place is because I believe, and I'm on a mission to try and make people in the world more non-obvious, more open-minded, and just to see the things that maybe we don't pay enough attention to. And so my goal with this entire show is to spotlight some of the stories that you might not have seen, to share some of the more interesting things that are out there, and to just engage in some dialogue and give you maybe a little bit of different news and stories that you perhaps hadn't seen before. So that is our show. Thank you for joining. Happy Thursday once again, and always remember to stay non-obvious.